After midnight on the 27th of December, 2025, the 96L6E radar screen inside the S-400 command room southeast of Melitopol detected a UAV cluster from the southwest. Captain Sokolov ordered target lock in under 1 minute, and 4 M96E2 missiles tore through the night sky with absolute precision. 90 seconds later, 11 out of 12 UAVs were fireballs crashing into the fields outside the kill zone. Sokolov logged, Wave 7, success. But one small detail on the C2 map went unmentioned. This was the 7th wave in 4 hours, and the radar operator beside him was blinking more slowly, slumped forward, fingers lightly trembling on the keyboard. Within the next hour, this crew would make its first mistake, not because the radar went blind or the missiles ran out, but because of the one thing no air defense system in the world can reload: human sleep. Melitopol is the lifeline linking Crimea with Donbass, a narrow corridor hemmed in by artillery and FPV threats from multiple directions, where every movement must pass through the geometry of overlapping kill zones. Russia does not treat this as a single defensive position. They built an entire deep-layered air defense web, long-range batteries with overlapping coverage, short-range protection wrapped around the radar, all connected through a centralized command network designed to react faster than any UAV wave ever seen before. The tactical assumption was built on sufficient firepower to counter any simultaneous attack, a 4-hour duty rotation, 8 hours of rest, ammunition expenditure calculated against a maximum of 30 UAVs at once. But no one modeled the scenario of many small, continuous waves, not dense enough to be decisive, yet numerous enough to deny recovery time. 4 defensive layers operated like a symphony. NABO-M covering 600 kilometers, the S-400 kill zone at 100 kilometers, Pantsir S-1 with 30mm cannons protecting the radar, and Igla manpads as the final layer. After each wave, 15 minutes were required to reload, inspect, and log. But those 15 minutes did not exist. The first wave arrived late on the evening of the 26th of December with nearly 20 UAVs from 3 directions. NABO-M detected them at long range, data flowed through Polyana D4M1, the S-400 locked on from 100 kilometers and launched within 6 minutes from detection to completion. Not a single UAV slipped through, and the command room was flooded with absolute confidence. The system ran as smoothly as it had in hundreds of rehearsals. 45 minutes later, a second wave arrived with more than 20 UAVs, flying slower and lower, 600 meters instead of 1,200. The radar took a few dozen seconds longer to classify due to the different signature. The firing timeline stretched slightly, but the result remained perfect. A question came over the radio within the crew. Why are they flying differently from the previous wave? No one answered. The third wave came after midnight. 15 UAVs with chaotic speeds, some fast, some slow. The S-400 prioritization algorithm was disrupted, forcing manual intervention, reaction time increased noticeably, and one FPV slipped through to strike the auxiliary Costa 2E2 radar. Damage was minor, but it was the first crack. Sokolov looked at the screen. They're testing us. The fourth wave came after 1 in the morning, 8 UAVs flying close together, creating a merged radar signature resembling a large target. The system misidentified it as an aircraft and recommended the long-range 48 N6 missile at triple the cost, forcing a manual override that took 2 minutes while the UAVs advanced several more kilometers. All 8 UAVs were shot down, but the crew skipped the post-launch check. One launcher reported a fault, unnoticed. After 3 hours, the hardware remained sound. The S-400 still had 2/3 of its missiles, Pantsir more than half its ammunition. But the humans had endured 4 waves without rest. Their mindset shifted from confidence to tired but controlled, and operations began to run on reflex rather than alert awareness. The 5th wave began shortly after 2 o'clock. 12 UAVs appeared from the north. For the first time that night, the radar was forced to rotate its scan angle, costing 40 seconds. During that window, the UAV cluster advanced another 8 kilometers. The reaction window narrowed to a dangerous margin. Most were shot down, but one slipped into the Panzer layer precisely as the system was reloading. 5 seconds late, the UAV flew another 400 meters, then self-destructed just before fire could open. The failure did not lie in detection or weapons, but in operational tempo. The system was still tracking the target, but the action chain broke at the smallest steps. Classification delayed by a few seconds. Fire channel synchronization is delayed by a few seconds. Target priority shifted while the launcher was reloading. These delays never appear in training models, but they appear when a system is forced to operate continuously. 20 minutes later, 6 UAVs appeared exactly as the S-400 was reloading. The task was pushed down to Panzer. 120 30mm rounds were fired at 6 targets, double the normal expenditure. Accuracy dropped due to slowed reactions and dispersed fire. Panzer reported a need for 15 minutes to reload. There were no 15 minutes. Each transition from S-400 to Panzer was not merely a change of defensive layer, but a change of the entire procedure. Communication channels changed, target priorities changed, decision rhythm was broken, error began to accumulate. The 7th wave arrived close to 2 in the morning. 12 UAVs approached after the crew had endured more than 4 hours of engagement. Procedures were still correct, but noticeably slower. Time from detection to target lock increased by another 40 seconds. The fire decision lagged by an additional 20 seconds. Ammunition expenditure rose by more than 30% to achieve the same result. The shift rotation plan remained fixed to the clock, while efficiency degraded with every minute of operation. A 20-minute lull followed. The system detected no new targets. Tension temporarily eased, but on the intelligence map, 60 UAVs remained holding position 40 kilometers from the site. The 8th wave began close to 3 o'clock. 4 UAVs approached at significantly higher speeds than previous waves. Radar detection was delayed by 30 seconds due to a different Doppler profile. When the S-400 fired, one missile failed to leave the tube, a fault from hours earlier that had gone unaddressed. 3 UAVs were shot down. The remaining one dropped into the Panzer layer precisely as the launcher was reloading. No layer could respond in the final 5 seconds. The UAV struck the Costa II E2 radar and destroyed it completely. This was the first critical loss. Not because enemy firepower was superior, but because a 5-second gap opened at exactly the wrong moment. Sustained pressure had lasted long enough for a minor error to become the collapse point of the entire defensive chain. The 9th wave came just after 3 in the morning with 20 UAVs, the largest since the night began, but the crew had already endured 8 waves across 5 hours without rest. Reaction time had slowed to nearly double, and the operators needed almost a full minute to wake up after the alarm sounded. Eyes on the screen, but the brain lagging behind. The S-400 brought down 14 of the 20, a noticeably lower rate, while 6 slipped into the Panzer layer, which managed to destroy only 4 before running out of ammunition. 2 FPVs broke through and slammed into the Polyana D-4M1 command vehicle, disrupting C2 for 8 minutes and forcing a shift to autonomous mode, cutting off data sharing. A temporary Panzer ammunition depot detonated. 600 rounds burned, a tall column of black smoke rising. A message came down from higher command. Relief crew arrives in 30 minutes. But those 30 minutes meant there were no Panzer units with sufficient ammunition left. The S-400 was below half capacity, and the order followed. Hold fire for high-priority targets only. Do not engage slow single UAVs. The 10th wave came close to 4 o'clock. 8 UAVs flew low, below 400 meters, an altitude the 96 L6E struggled to track due to ground clutter. The defense had to rely on Panzer radar, but there was no ammunition left, forcing a shift to man-pads. 5 of 8 were shot down. 3 slipped through and struck 3 logistical weak points, the backup radar power line, an S-400 ammunition truck 12 kilometers along the supply route, and an auxiliary satellite C2 station. None was catastrophic alone, but each was a small cut that made the system bleed steadily. After 4 hours, the shift change occurred. The relief crew arrived alert but lacking context. The outgoing crew said only, They're flying in many ways. Be careful. Leaving the new team unaware of how many rounds remained in each launcher, which radars were damaged, whether C2 was operational or in fallback mode, and which Panzer units still had ammunition. The 11th wave, the last of the night, came 20 minutes after the new crew sat down. 16 UAVs split into 2 groups, 10 decoys flying high and slow, 6 FPVs masked low. The inexperienced crew focused on the 10 high targets. The S-400 destroyed 9. But the 6 FPVs penetrated from low altitude. Panzer was out of ammunition. Manpads reacted slowly, unfamiliar with the tempo. 4 of the 6 hit their marks, an S-400 launcher heavily damaged, requiring 3 weeks of repair. The 96 L6E radar losing 40% of its effectiveness, a diesel fuel truck exploding in a towering column of fire, and a short-range communication station destroyed. After 7 hours, Ukraine had used approximately 150 UAVs. Russia expended nearly 70 S-400 missiles, thousands of Pantsir rounds, and 24 manpads. The interception rate exceeded 90%, an impressive number on paper, but the real damage was tangible. Launchers, 3 radars, a C2 vehicle, ammunition depots, fuel trucks, and most critically, the crews were exhausted, and the system required 48 hours to recover. Early on the morning of the 27th of December, a Ukrainian reconnaissance UAV at 3,000 meters swept the site with a thermal camera. Smoke from Kasta 2E2, the burn scar of the Panzer ammunition dump, Poliana still standing but its satellite antenna bent, an S-400 launcher tilted with black scorch marks, the remaining tubes intact but empty, not yet reloaded. Ukraine did not destroy everything, but paralyzed it for 2 days. An estimated $1.5 to $2 million worth of UAVs traded for 15 to 20 million in indirect Russian losses, ammunition, equipment, repairs, opportunity. But more importantly, it proved the weakness was not in technology, but in humans and time. Russia's official report successfully intercepted over 90%, but a leaked internal report. The system needs redesign for prolonged pressure scenarios. Shift rotations are not fast enough. Humans become a more severe weakness than any technological limitation. Recommendations: cut shifts from 4 hours to 2. Increase relief crews from 1 to 2. Add automation to reduce the human decision load. The consequence was irreversible. War of attrition by time was proven. Russia was forced to spread forces thinner along 600 kilometers of the Crimea-Donbass line, each battery needing 2 relief crews instead of 1, straining manpower shortages and driving costs up significantly. Close to 5 in the morning, the briefing room consolidated data from 11 interception waves over 7 continuous hours. The tables showed missile, cannon ammunition, and manpads expenditure rising wave by wave, while reaction time lengthened and accuracy dropped sharply in the latter half of the engagement chain. The logistical question was not how much ammunition could be replenished, but whether readiness could be sustained if the attack cycle repeated the following night. A modern air defense system can intercept effectively when there is still enough time for the steps of detection, classification, decision, firing, reloading, and recovery. However, when the enemy attacks with prolonged tempo, rather than overwhelming firepower, technology only slows the degradation process. It cannot stop it. The final weakness lies not in radar, missiles, or algorithms, but in the physiological and cognitive limits of humans operating under continuous pressure for hours. In the context of modern war, effectiveness is no longer decided by stronger weapons or higher hit rates, but by the ability to withstand long-term pressure and to understand precisely the opponent system's tolerance threshold. Sustained operations force small errors to appear by probability, and all it takes is a delay of a few seconds at the wrong moment to open a gap for attack vehicles to slip through.